The divine action, although only visible to the eye of faith, is everywhere and always present. All creatures that exist are in the hands of God. The action of the creature can only be perceived by the senses, but faith sees in all things the action of the Creator. The action of the creature is a veil which covers the profound mysteries of the divine operation. There is not a moment in which God does not present himself under the cover of some pain to be endured, of some consolation to be enjoyed, or of some duty to be performed. All that takes place within us, around us, or through us contains and conceals his divine action. It is really and truly there present, but invisibly present, so that we are always surprised and do not recognize his operation until it has ceased. If we could lift the veil, and if we were attentive and watchful, God would continually reveal himself to us, and we should see his divine action in everything that happened to us and rejoice in it. At each successive occurrence we should exclaim, "It is the Lord," and we should accept every fresh circumstance as a gift of God. We should look upon creatures as feeble tools in the hands of an able workman, and should discover easily that nothing was wanting to us, and that the constant providence of God disposed him to bestow upon us at every moment whatever we required. If only we had faith, we should show goodwill to all creatures. We should cherish them and be interiorly grateful to them as serving, by God's will, for our perfection. If we lived the life of faith without intermission, we should have an uninterrupted commerce with God and a constant familiar intercourse with him. What the air is for the transmission of our thoughts and words, such would be our actions and sufferings for those of God. They would be as the substance of his words, and in all external events we should see nothing but what was excellent and holy. God is interpreted by faith. Without the light of faith, creation would speak to us in vain. It is a writing in cipher in which we find nothing but confusion, an entangled mesh from which no one would expect to hear the voice of God. Faith gives us the clue to the cipher, and reveals to us in this mass of confusion marvels of divine wisdom. Faith changes the face of the earth. By it the heart is raised, entranced, and becomes conversant with heavenly things. Faith is our light in this life. By it we possess the truth without seeing it. We touch what we cannot feel, and see what is not evident to the senses. By it we view the world as though it did not exist. It is the key of the treasure house, the key of the abyss of the science of God. It is faith that teaches us the hollowness of created things. By it, God reveals and manifests himself in all things. By faith, the veil is torn aside to reveal the eternal truth. All that we see is nothing but vanity and deceit. Truth can be found only in God. What a difference between the thoughts of God and the illusions of man! How is it that, although continually warned that everything that happens in the world is but a shadow, a figure, a mystery of faith, we look at the outside only, and do not perceive the enigma they contain? We fall into this trap like men without sense, instead of raising our eyes to the principle, source, and origin of all things, in which they all have their right name and just proportions, in which everything is supernatural, divine, and sanctifying. We live according to what we see and feel, and wander like madmen in a labyrinth of darkness and illusion for want of the light of faith which would guide us safely through it. By means of faith, we should be able to aspire after God and to live for him alone, forsaking and going beyond mere figures. By faith, the operation of God is recognized. The more hidden the divine operation beneath an outwardly repulsive appearance, the more visible it is to the eye of faith. The soul, enlightened by faith, judges of things in a very different way to those who, having only the standard of the senses by which to measure them, ignore the inestimable treasure they contain. He who knows that a certain person in disguise is the king, behaves towards him very differently to another who, only perceiving an ordinary man, treats him accordingly. In the same way, the soul that recognizes the will of God in every smallest event, and also in those that are most distressing and direful, receives all with an equal joy, pleasure, and respect. It throws open all its doors to receive with honor what others fear and fly from with horror. The outward appearance may be mean and contemptible, but beneath this abject garb the heart discovers and honors the majesty of the King. The deeper the abasement of his entry in such a guise, and in secret, the more does the heart become filled with love. I cannot describe what the heart feels when it accepts the divine will in such humble, poor, and mean disguises. Faith is strengthened, increased, and enriched by those things that escape the senses. The less there is to see, the more there is to believe. To accept the will of God in extraordinary circumstances does not indicate a life animated by such great faith as to love the will of God in ordinary things. For faith cannot be said to be real living faith until it is tried, and has triumphed over every effort for its destruction. War with the senses enables faith to obtain a more glorious victory. To consider God equally good in things that are petty and ordinary, as in those that are great and uncommon, is to have a faith that is not ordinary, but great and extraordinary. To be satisfied with the present moment is to delight in and to adore the divine will in all that has to be done or suffered in all that succession of events that fill, as they pass, each present moment. Nothing can hide him from the piercing eye of faith. The louder the senses proclaim that in this or that there is no God, the more firmly do these souls clasp and embrace their bundle of myrrh. Nothing daunts them, nothing disgusts them. The life of faith is nothing less than the continued pursuit of God through all that disguises, disfigures, destroys, and, so to say, annihilates him. Faithful souls endure a constant succession of trials. God hides beneath veils of darkness and elusive appearances which make his will difficult to recognize. But in spite of every obstacle, these souls follow him and love him even to the death of the cross. They know that, leaving the darkness, they must run after the light of this divine sun, which from its rising to its setting, however dark and thick may be the clouds that obscure it, enlightens, warms, and inflames the faithful hearts that bless, praise, and contemplate it during the whole circle of its mysterious course. Pursue then without ceasing, ye faithful souls, this beloved spouse, who with giant strides passes from one extremity of the heavens to the other. If you be content and untiring, nothing will have power to hide him from you. He moves above the smallest blades of grass as under the mighty cedar. The grains of sand are under his feet as well as the huge mountains. Wherever you may turn, there you will find his footprints, and in following them perseveringly, you will find him wherever you may be. Oh, what delightful peace we enjoy when we have learnt by faith to find God thus in all his creatures. Then is darkness luminous and bitterness sweet. Faith, while showing us things as they are, changes their ugliness into beauty, and their malice into virtue. Faith is the mother of sweetness, confidence, and joy. It cannot help feeling tenderness and compassion for its enemies, by whose means it is so immeasurably enriched. The greater the harshness and severity of the creature, the greater by the operation of God is the advantage to the soul. While the human instrument strives to do harm, the divine workman, in whose hands it is, makes use of its very malice to remove from the soul all that might be prejudicial to it. The will of God has nothing but sweetness, favors, and treasures for submissive souls. It is impossible to repose too much confidence in it, nor to abandon oneself to it too utterly. It always acts for and desires that which is most conducive to our perfection, provided we allow it to act. Faith does not doubt. The more unfaithful, uncertain, and rebellious are the senses, the louder faith cries, All is well, it is the will of God. There is nothing that the eye of faith does not penetrate, nothing that the power of faith does not overcome. It passes through the thick darkness, and no matter what clouds may gather, it goes straight to the truth, and holding to it firmly, will never let it go.